This should be the get-right game for the Eagles. Either way, we'll talk about it tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for watching the Craig Carton Show.
If you're O'Connell, you have a serious decision to make. Like, what is, again, he's been hurt now in back-to-back years, McCarthy.
Yeah.
You don't know what you have.
100%.
This is a similar situation to what the Niners did with Trey Lance. Like, if the guy can't stay on the field, and again, limited, you have to do what's best for the organization.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Florida State put up 498 rushing yards on this defense. 8 rushing touchdowns, and they almost averaged 10 yards per carry.
Tough scene.
I mean, you got to be kidding me. It should be 60 to 7.
Yeah. Give me the 7.
I just gave you the 7.
Exactly. And
are you
the
on
extra
this?
point. I'm thinking field goal and maybe a
but
safety.
Are you on
Joe.
this? This is
Over
your best
3.5.
Okay.
Didn't you read the screen? What, are you not paying attention to the show?
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
I can tell you right now, Jamar Chase is getting moved on a lot of teams. And I understand why. I mean, you don't have Joe Burrow coming back this year. It's just not happening. And then Jake Browning has been less than impressive. There's no doubt about that. So Jamar Chase is still an extraordinary talent, and I think buying him low is interesting. Why? Because if you do look, the schedule does get a little bit easier. The defense is still bad. Jake Browning has been productive.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Basically a year's worth of starts at this point, because remember, Drake May was not the starter out of the gate during his rookie year last year. That was Jacoby Brissett. There have been some, encouraging performances and, I think some flashes of what could be upper echelon talent within the scope of the league. But going into this year, it was, we're going to find out.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How would North Carolina buy out Bill Belichick's contract? Plus, there might not be a WNBA team in Boston till 2033. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today from FOS Studios here in New York City. I'm Baker Machado.
And I'm Renee Washington, and thanks so much for joining us as each and every week that we're chatting the biggest stories in the business and culture of sports. We also have Texas Tech booster Cody Campbell on later to chat his campaign to end the NCAA. But first, let's jump into the shoot-around.
Yeah, Renee, and let's start in baseball, where the Toronto Blue Jays beat the Yankees 5-2 Wednesday. That's win Game 4 of their playoff series, and now will head to their first American League championship since 2016. This is where they're going to await the winner of the Tigers-Mariners series. And the Yankees, who haven't won a World Series in 16 years, will now end 2025 with the third highest payroll in baseball at $300 million. A manager, Aaron Boone, did tell reporters he does plan to return to the team next season here, Renee.
Yeah, in terms of payroll, as the third highest, they did at least lose to the fifth highest. I guess that's a little bit of, I guess. But in terms of changes, I am curious to see what they do with Aaron Boone, but I'm also curious to see what happens with Aaron Judge, because there has been questions. He's 33 years old. He's a big part of that
in the prime of his career.
$300 million team payroll, because he just signed back in 2022 a massive 9-year, $360 million contract. He was the highest paid player in history at that time. Of course, that's been passed. But you paid him with the expectation of winning a World Series. And to have the second longest drought in franchise history, when you have a guy in the prime of his career that's been breaking all types of records across the franchise, but also the league, up in there in the conversation with Babe Ruth and others of the greatest, and you don't have a title, how much longer will the Yankees continue at this pace? Because the Yankees, much like the Phillies, who play the Dodgers today and could have the same types of issues if they get bounced by the Dodgers, looking at a Bryce Harper and the Phillies, you pay these guys to win titles, and we still have some of the best ever in baseball that have never won.
And also the other teams in the American League, namely the Blue Jays, the Mariners, are much younger and really deep in a lot of areas, so the Yankees still have a lot cut out for them. Meanwhile, let's move to the WNBA, as the Connecticut Sun's ownership group reportedly does not see a path where the team could be sold and relocated to nearby Boston. This all according to the Boston Globe. The report says the WNBA does not view former Celtics co-owner Steve Pagulaika's bid as strong enough to get the franchise, and Boston might have to wait until 2033 for an expansion team. The state of Connecticut is still trying to keep the Sun in the state, but if the team were to move, Houston could be the WNBA's preferred destination here, Renee.
So it's come out that the WNBA is not swayed by the Governor Maura Healey's cries for having a team in Boston for that massive $325 million offer, because they're also keeping an eye on the valuations of teams continue to increase. So they're saying this $325 million bid might be lowballing what could potentially happen in the future. Plus, we also know the CBA is up in the midst of negotiations. So in terms of revenue and salary and just financially in general, a lot could still change. So in addition to the state of Connecticut, there's other options as well. Mark Lazary, the former Milwaukee Bucks co-owner, has mentioned possibly buying the team and keeping them in Connecticut. Houston's been brought up in the conversation, but in order to return the historic franchise, it also requires relocation, similar to the issue with Boston. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but it feels like we're not getting closer to a sale.
No, that's very true. Well, just days after trading Joe Flacco to the Bengals and announcing that rookie Dylan Gabriel would be their new starting quarterback, Browns coach Kevin Stefanski was non-committal on if either rookie Shedeur Sanders or practice squad member Bailey Zappi would be the team's new backup. The Browns currently have cap hits on 8 quarterbacks this season. 3 of them aren't even on the team anymore. Plus, of course, you've got injured Deshaun Watson at the top of that list as well. Oy. Oh, my goodness. What happens here?
To have 3 healthy quarterbacks on your team of those 8, and you have a dead cap hit ranging from $8,000 for Kenny Pickett to $35.9 million owed to injured Deshaun Watson. That's messy. I just feel like the Browns right now are in the midst of trying to shed some dead weight in cap space in particular, because they've had a couple of trades in the last 2 days. 2 trades that allowed them now have 10 draft picks in 2026. So they have between rounds 1 and 5 a ton of picks and options. Looks like they're in rebuild mode, but it is shocking to me. We've never heard a team say our backup quarterback or our third will not move up to QB2 because we want to give them time to practice with the starting line.
Right.
So he might be inactive altogether, and they want to wait to see if he can be successful in having a time to practice. I know Ian Rappaport has mentioned that in his reporting. So it's a weird situation with the Browns right now, but it does feel like they're in the process of building towards the future.
Yeah, and why would you even give a 5th-round pick on Shedeur Sanders if he's going to compete with a practice squad member?
It's insulting
all of
at this
that
point.
is crazy. Speaking of crazy, North Carolina and Bill Belichick say they're still fully committed to each other. They say after a report that the 2 sides are in discussions about a potential exit for the Hall of Fame coach. This after a disastrous 2-3 start to this season. Now, Belichick's first 3 years of his 5-year, $50 million contract are fully guaranteed. So what are the buyout options for the Tar Heels if they decide to move on? Let's take a look at that in today's main event. All right, let's bring in our college sports reporter, Amanda Kristovich. So what do you think is really the catalyst at the end of the day that triggered the discussions maybe of a buyout here?
I mean, look, the situation at Chapel Hill is just not good on the field. That is the catalyst. The catalyst is that the Tar Heels are not playing well. They're 2-3, and they have the if you add up all the points.
They're getting outscored like crazy.
Yeah, if you add up all the points that they've lost to Power 4 conference opponents, according to USA Today, it's their worst start since the school literally started a football team, okay, in like the 1880s. So that is the catalyst for all these discussions. And it's also the catalyst for the other local reports, WRAL, Inside Carolina, that have been doing some great reporting about some of the dysfunction and some of the issues culturally with inside the program. But ultimately, the only reason we're all looking into this is because the team is not playing well.
Yeah, before we even get into those other issues off the field, because there's a long list of them, in reality, if UNC decided to part ways with Bill Belichick and buy him out, what would that look like? They've come out with this statement on Twitter, on X, that they're not, that they're fully committed. Bill Belichick allegedly claims he's fully committed. But exit strategy rumors have been talked about, that there's been discussions. Financially, does it make more sense for UNC to buy him out or for them to mutually part ways, him step down? What works here for both parties?
Yeah, I mean, in UNC's case, I think it would definitely behoove them to allow Belichick to leave on his own. The buyout structure is very unusual. It's unlike anything that many lawyers have ever seen. Basically, the buyout so if UNC fires him without cause between now and December 31st of 2027, they owe him the remaining amount of money that is on the contract between when they fire him and that date. So if they were to fire him at the end of this season, they owe him $20 million because it's a 5-year, $50 million deal, right? But if they fire him after that date, they owe him nothing. So they could wait, or If he decides to leave between now and any point, he owes them $1 million.
Interesting. And of course, we remember that $1 million, I think, was $10 million at one point because there was worry he might go back to the NFL in June.
Before June.
Yes, exactly, which that, of course, is not going to happen. So I guess it seems like the writing is on the wall. I think we've seen this a lot with other college coaches. Is there a way Belichick survives this? Do you think he ends up finishing the season at UNC, or does he get bounced before the season's over?
I can't see him getting bounced before the season is over because it's only a 5-game experiment at this point. Right? So things are not going well, but, you know, UNC is trying to build up a football program that, you know, they're not known for their football program. So at the very least, you know, it would make sense, in my humble opinion, to let him finish out the season and then make determinations at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard recruiting violations. We've heard a potentially preferential treatment for players dysfunction, the Hulu documentary allegedly getting canceled. Does that expedite the timeline of when Bill Belichick is no longer with the Tar Heels?
He's got to win against Cal the next week or so.
I know. He really, really, really does. And he has, you know, a week and a half at this point to prepare for that. So I think that the dysfunction, the recruiting violations, which at this point seem minor, you know, they would not really be cause for major concern. They're more accidents than they are, you know, a big conspiracy like previous iterations of UNC. But I do think that they will all be taken into consideration in terms of, is Bill Belichick capable of operating in this college environment, which is very different, obviously, from the NFL.
Yeah. Either way, his first 3 years of his 5-year contract guaranteed, and of course, he's making $10 million a year from all of that. Amanda Kristovich, of course, you can read more of this on frontofficesports.com. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us. And coming up next, Texas Tech mega booster Cody Campbell joins us to tell us how he plans to save the NCAA and NIL and college athletes and so much more. That's coming up next on Front Office Sports Today. Don't go anywhere.
Shedeur Sanders will be starting for the Browns by week 9. I am buying this. I am buying this absolutely. At a certain point, Joe Flacco just not the answer. We know they already made the change. Dylan Gabriel is starting this week. We know that. But maybe a team needs a quarterback, and they're willing to trade for Joe Flacco for some level of stability, and then we simply get nothing out of Dylan Gabriel. He is a rookie quarterback when it's all said and done. Maybe there's just no production from him. So why not just move on to a different rookie quarterback that you have just to see what you have? And then, as George, as you mentioned up at the top, you have to evaluate going into next year's draft. So I will absolutely buy this.
The next 4 weeks, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Miami, New England. I mean, the question is this. If they truly believe that Gabriel could be a future starter, you got to give him more than 4 weeks, right? That's 4 weeks is not enough. Minnesota, it's a rough game, all right, being played with England this week. Pittsburgh, they haven't have a defense. Miami is not very good. New England's supposed to have a good defense, hasn't here. I want to sort of go. I mean, I think Shedeur Sanders is going to start at some point this week. I don't think it's going to be by week 10, although that does make sense here to name him the starter during the bye week, get him 2 weeks here. I'm going to go more, you know, maybe double digits, week 12, week 14, somewhere around there. Because I'm going to give Gabriel a longer run. I think Gabriel might do some damage here against these lesser defenses here. So I think give him a longer runway here. That being said, I do not think Gabriel is the long-term future of this team. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback at all here. I think he's a number 2 at best here. Sanders could be a number 1. I have doubts about him too. I think Sanders has a better shot. So by week 9, by week 10, I'll sell that. But if you would give me a couple more weeks, I would have bought it.
Fantasy Sports Today, Fridays starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on SportsGrid.
And welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington and Baker Machado. Well, 2 bills in Congress, including the SCORE Act, which would reform NIL laws and prevent athletes from obtaining employee status, continue to be stalled in Congress. However, those lobbying against the SCORE Act are offering a different option. This would be a new governing body that would replace the NCAA altogether. So let's talk to one of those individuals. Let's bring in Cody Campbell. He's a Texas Tech Board of Regents chairman, also a big booster at that university. He's also the co-chair of President Trump's commission addressing issues on college sports. Cody, great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us. So explain your vision of what this new NCAA governing body could look like?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of a it's not said quite right to say that I'm against the SCORE Act necessarily. I think the SCORE Act does address some issues that need to be addressed. I just think that it's incomplete. And so if we're going to solve the problems in college sports, we need to solve them comprehensively, right? We need to, if we're going to only have one bite at the apple here, it's really hard to get things done in Congress and get them to pay attention to issues. A lot of people, the headlines are NIL, transfer portal, those types of things. Really, those issues are more symptoms of other problems, deeper problems, bigger problems that are less understood. And so what we've been trying to do is just get people to understand them and get people to see that there are more fundamental issues at play with college sports that are threatening to the long-term health of especially women's sports and especially the Olympic sports. So there are two sports that pay for everything else. I think most people know this is football and men's basketball. They both make money. The rest of the sports in the college sports world all lose money. And so the universities take the money they make off football and basketball and they pay for everything else. But the other problem is that the vast majority of athletic departments are running massive deficits. The average deficit across the 136 FBS schools is $20 million per year. So what's happening is, they have to maintain competitiveness in football and basketball because that's where they make their money. So they have to keep that money coming in, so they have to make investments there. And so in order to be able to do that, they're being forced to choose to cut women's sports and Olympic sports. And so, people ask me, well, what's your why? Why are you involved in something like this? My why is the student athletes. My why is the communities. College sports provide opportunity for kids all over the country that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Sure.
And 60% of the CEOs and companies in the United States have college sports backgrounds. These universities are the heartbeat of the social fabric of many communities across the country. College sports are our Olympic development pipeline. We're the only country in the world that uses universities to develop its Olympic system. Without college sports, we have no Olympic development system at all. So there are a lot of reasons that it needs to be preserved, right? And that's my why. And so that's why I want to get this problem fixed. And I think most fundamentally, thinking about it as a businessman, the economic side of it is the part that I gravitate toward, and trying to find ways to get more revenue into the system. Ultimately, it comes down to the way that we market our media rights. We have a professionalized system on one side where we're now paying the athletes as professionals, and some of them are making a lot of money. But then on the revenue side, we have this amateur joke of a system, and so we massively under-monetize the value that we have.
Yeah, there's absolutely so much there, as you talk about, of layers to this in terms of issues and ways to tackle it to best create a system that works for the student athletes themselves. Right. We've heard the SCORE Act as well as the SAFE Act. We've also heard private equity get brought into this. I'm curious, where do you stand in terms of leaning towards the SCORE Act versus the SAFE Act, or even in terms of private equity in college sports, and especially with the conversation with those around you, such as someone like President Trump, of where you think college sports should go next?
Well, I think that some combination of the SAFE Act and the SCORE Act is what it needs to be. And I think that's probably where it's going to end up. I'm optimistic that we're eventually going to get there, but it's going to take some wrangling and some negotiating and some difficulty, and ultimately they just have a lot going on. Right now we're in the middle of a government shutdown. That slowed things down. Before that it's something. It's always something.
It's always something that pushes it sort of to the back burner.
And this is not.
Very true.
College sports are not what would be considered to be an existential issue, but they are very important to a lot of Americans.
Well, to that, I do want to get to an existential issue because, with the House settlement, now a lot of these universities are on the hook for paying at least a certain amount to their players and other parts within the program. This has led a lot of schools who maybe are not in the Big Ten or even the SEC, let's say maybe the Mountain West or the American Conference, to maybe even worry, are they even going to be here in 10 years from now? If we don't see any sort of changes in Congress to change the rules and stuff like that, how many of these schools and these universities will even have athletic departments in the next 10 years?
The answer is in 10 years, if nothing happens, they won't. They exist. And so you're talking about opportunity lost across the country. And from my perspective, the opportunity that the high jumper gets at Fresno State is just as important as the opportunity that the football player at Georgia gets. it's life-changing for both of them.
So you're concerned for the future of college sports as a whole, that a lot of programs will be folding.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to shrink. It's going to be smaller. The opportunity is going to be smaller. We're going to be, this incredible leadership development tool that we have is going to shrink, and that's bad for the country.
And even women's sports, you would almost think would be the first ones on the chopping block for that.
All women's sports lose money. And so, Title IX is going to force, some amount of them to be cut second. But, I mean, the men's sports, you're already seeing track and field scholarships being cut.
Yes.
But it's the women's sports are next on the chopping block. And so, but it's sports like volleyball, like swimming, like gymnastics, like wrestling. Those sports, like baseball even, those sports are going to go away. This is not something that's going to happen immediately. The erosion is just going to continue, but we've already seen 183 programs cut.
Right.
And that was the impetus for President Trump's executive order a few weeks ago, where he basically said, you got to stop cutting sports. You have to remain at 2024 levels, which is good, and I'm glad that he did that, but it's stopped the cutting, but it's effectively an unfunded mandate. I think it'll get resolved one way or another. I think if, either we'll find a solution, people will come together, and we'll all work together, and, you got to get the conference commissioners to stop being selfish and get them to come to the table. But you got to get the media partners to work with everybody. We have to get everybody to cooperate, different schools. I mean, there are a lot of stakeholders. That's difficult to do. So either that'll happen, or things will blow up in such a bad way that people will be like, oh my God, we got to do something.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that the first thing happens is that people come together before the system starts to explode, and a lot of people get hurt in the process. But unfortunately, as you guys know, many times it takes crisis in order to cause change, and that may be where we end up.
Very true.
Very true.
That's
we
concerning.
know a lot is happening, but we know at least your name is going to be involved in a lot of this. Cody, such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we got a lot more front office sports today headed your way right after this quick break.
At this event, people from Amazon and Alexa made it very clear that in addition to Sports Highlight coming up, you will be able to perhaps buy sports tickets to events, buy movie tickets, arrange fantasy football teams, and I think somewhere down the road, maybe not too far down the road, given the NBA on Prime deal, they will allow sports betting on the television set through Alexa Plus.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
I'm done with the Buffalo Bills, and I'm not upset about it because they look vulnerable. I cannot believe this team is 4-0 because they could easily be 1-3. They go on their heels, and I can't believe they have not one but two double-digit victories in games they could have very well lost.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Well, maybe that Chiefs dynasty is actually crumbling. And listen, I don't blame you for that, but you would be wrong. Here's what actually happened in that game last night. See, the Kansas City Chiefs dominated the Jacksonville Jaguars pretty much up and down that field. They outgained them, Donnie. You ready by this? By over 150 yards of offense.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Mike Trout, will he ask for a trade? And maybe I'm a bit of a Neanderthal for asking this, and people are going to say, listen, he's never leaving. I refuse to accept that we're just not going to get Mike Trout postseason baseball ever again. Because clearly when healthy, he can still do it. But he's also rarely healthy and still kind of expensive. It's complicated.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
And welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington and Baker Machado. Well, despite only having one loss this season, there's plenty of drama over with the Philadelphia Eagles. This is Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts confirmed that they had a private meeting with star wideout A.J. Brown. This is the Eagles enter Week 6 with the NFL's 30th ranked offense. So let's bring in Zach Berman, senior writer over at The Athletic, and he's also the author of the new book, Leap Year, the Philadelphia Eagles' Ascent to Super Bowl champions. Zach, we'll get to the book in just a moment, but let's start with tonight. The Eagles play against the Giants. I mentioned that team meeting. Is the sky actually falling, or are we just being hyperbolic here?
Yeah, no, I'm in Philadelphia right now, and I can confirm the sky is not falling. And the reality is they're 4-1, and they're the defending Super Bowl champs. The offense needs to play better. I think in that locker room they would be the first ones to admit it. But they've beaten the Kansas City Chiefs this year. They've beaten you go on down the list, teams that are legitimate postseason contenders, the Los Angeles Rams, right? And so when I look at that, and I look at the fact that they obviously lost to the Broncos last week, but it was a game when the Eagles were up 2 scores in the fourth quarter. They had some real foolish, costly penalties that were immaterial to the play itself, that potentially took points off the board. So I don't think the sky is falling, but I do think the offense must play better.
Yeah, and to your point, this is the first loss in over a year. It's been 18 consecutive games, including the Super Bowl run, without a loss for the Eagles. Yet we are getting so much brought up negatively around that conversation that Baker just touched on. I know Saquon Barkley mentioned we're just friends having a conversation. This was not a player meeting in the sense of massive issues, but there's been a lot of external noise that's been claiming there's tension in the locker room. You're in that locker room on a daily, consistent basis. Tell us the truth. What is really going on behind the scenes with the Eagles? Is this just the external noise, or is there any validity to internal issues?
I wouldn't frame it as internal issues, but I think there is validity to the fact that this offense is not humming, so to speak. That A.J. Brown, who has the ability to be the best receiver in the NFL, he is not performing to the level that he wants to, right? I mean, he said before the season that he wants to put a stamp on being the best. That Saquon Barkley, who was the leading rusher in the NFL last year, had a historic season. The running game is not at the level that it needs to be. So I don't think that it's kumbaya in there right now, nor should it be, right? If this is a team that is playing offense the way they are, with the inconsistencies, and they say everything's fine, there's nothing to see here, then I think that would be more problematic than your team leaders, 3 captains of the team getting together and trying to rectify this.
Let's talk about your book here, Zach, because obviously, as Renee mentioned, the Eagles have won 20 of their last 21 games. They're the defending Super Bowl champions and likely probably one of the front runners to get it again this year. What have they been able to do in terms of constructing the roster and creating this team that has made them such a dynamic force in the NFL?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, first off, they've drafted well ever since that 2020 season when it was horrible here, and I think they would tell you that they've put together a string of really successful drafts. Whether it's Devontae Smith in 2021, or you look at Jordan Davis in 2022, they obviously draft Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. They've been able, last year Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. They've been able to get blue chip players. They traded for A.J. Brown in 2022 with a first round pick. So they've been able really to assemble a group of blue chip players, and that's important because really the way this roster is shaped is they have top of the league players. Where on offense they probably have 9 players who are Pro Bowl caliber. On defense they have Pro Bowl caliber players at all 3 levels, and then they have players on rookie contracts. They don't really have that middle class of players. So in order to structure it that way, you need to draft well to have those cost controlled players on your roster, and you need to have star level talent making top of the league money. And that's really what they have, and that's how Howie Roseman has put this roster together since the 2020 season, and it was a big reason why they won the Super Bowl in 2024.
And I love that you're able to document and talk through all of that in your book, Leap Year, just taking people behind the scenes of how this championship team was truly built.
Yeah, that's really what I tried to look at, Renee, is I went from the time the red confetti fell after the Super Bowl in 2023, it was on the backdrop of Jalen Hurts' phone, to the time the green confetti fell in the Super Bowl in February of 2025, and really looking at the collapse of the 2023 season. You can't dismiss that, but then what they did to rebound in 2024, the impact that Saquon Barkley had on the team, Zach Bond's ascension, Vic Fangio coming in as defensive coordinator, that was a major difference in that season. And really the way they were shaped by that collapse. And Nick Sirianni's leadership, this is really all documented in this book.
Amazing.
The book, of course, is called Leap Year, The Eagles' Ascent to Super Bowl Champions. Zach Berman, senior writer over at The Athletic. Zach, thank you so very much for joining us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Great to see you guys.
Our thanks, of course, to Zach Berman, senior writer at The Athletic, also author of the book Leap Year, The Philadelphia Eagles' Ascent to Super Bowl Champions.
Yeah, building a championship roster with some of the best offense, but with offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo, you have to wonder how much longer he's going to be in charge because the schematics of what we're seeing in their play calling has not been
How
great.
rusty their offense is a surprise. All right, Renee and I are back tomorrow.